Welcome. Scott here. Here is a quick boss guide for the upcoming Lufania Plus event, Act 3 Chapter 5 Part 1 Gathering Bearers, Entrusted Principle. The featured units are Jegran from Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, 8 from Final Fantasy Type 0, Kuja from Final Fantasy 9 and Rude from Final Fantasy 7. This story chapter event also marks the debut of the new introduced LGBT character Jegran. Kuja is also getting his rework with BT realization. 8 is getting his LD boards. We will be fighting Jegran's Core, which has 23 million HP. Throughout the fight, it can summon a minion, Crystal Weapon, which has 2.5 million HP. The boss is immune to launches. The turn requirement is 80. The HP requirements is 25,000. Before I continue further, here is a small disclaimer clause for the video. The guide is written based on the time that the event was released for the Japanese version. Please do note that it is possible that the boss fight mechanics might differ when the actual event is released in global. Firstly, let's go through the Lufania Plus Orb Conditions. The Lufania Plus Orb will begin at the start of the fight at the counter of 15 and it is a non-cancelable orb. To uptick the orb, you need inflicted with debuff or special debuff at level 2 or more at the start of its turn. Generally, the orb will be upticked when the boss acts, so you will need to give the boss turns. There are 2 exceptional cases where the orb will uptick on its own. Those are the auras triggered during the 79% and 49% HP thresholds. Apparently, it seems that the aura triggers are counted as a turn for the boss. Units that inflict stacking debuffs are Jegran, X-Death, Kuja, Edward, 7, Sync, Jack and Kurasame. With exception of Kuja, most of them can be used as calls as well. Unless you are using them in the party, it is important to space them out and give boss turns for upticking the orb. Now let's proceed with some party setup recommendations. Recommended calls abilities. To ensure that you are able to constantly break them, it is important to inflict defense down debuffs. Example of calls abilities that inflict defense down calls are Ferris, Jack, Titus. As the boss has a huge amount of HP damage up debuff calls like Kurasame, Gabrinth, Ignis, and Maria are useful. Although a bit trickier to use, aura type HP damage up calls like Queen and Kumari are also viable. As mentioned in the previous slide, you need to inflict a stacking debuff to uptick the orb. Other than Jack and Kurasame, you can consider the following units for calls as well. They are X-Death, Edward, 7 and Sync. Next, I will be covering units that will be useful to handle the fight mechanics. Like other Lufania Plus events, it is always recommended to bring supports for their aura and buffs. They are Purim, Setzer, Agrias, Katesith, Ishtala, Bartz, Lena and Afma. As the boss needs to get turns and has a hard-hitting recast, it is important to have some of damage mitigation. Options include Zack, Core, Beatrix, Warrior of Light, Orin, 8, Golov and Leon. For damage dealers, you can consider the following units: Jegran, Jet, Ace, Vaughn, Kuja, Galbez, Chaos, and Arthen. Depending on your setup, burst healing may be needed as well. You can consider Rude, Aerith, Rosa and Kumari. I have also included some of the units that I feel that they could be useful for the fight. You can use Kefka and Arsila to stop their attacks with HP silence. You can nullify the brave gains with Yuffie and dodge their attacks with Shadow using a lock call. On the screen, you will see a timeline showing the HP thresholds triggers that you need to watch out for. The boss's recast ability will change depending on its current HP. When its HP is 50% or greater, it will use an AoE Brave plus HP attack recast, Diffusive Energy Cannon. When its HP is below 50%, it will use Concentrated Energy Laser, which is a single target Brave plus HP attack. This attack ignores effects that nullifies Brave or HP damage. It seems always to target the lowest HP unit. The boss will start off the fight by summon a crystal weapon with its max brave. If the crystal weapon is still alive, after 3 to 4 turns, it will summon a second one. After its HP drop to 49%, whenever it takes a turn, it will initiate the enhanced summoning phase. The crystal weapon summoned will come with 5 framed buffs and the boss will gain a red aura which will spike up its defenses by 100%. Depending on your roster, this can be a difficult fight due to the astronomical brave gain and damage reduction auras and defensive boosts that the boss can get. Now let's proceed with the boss mechanics proper. Like the previous Lufania Plus fights, the boss will gain big stats boosts, brave damage, and brave gain reduction auras when you deplete their HP to a certain threshold. The threshold's trigger for this fight is at the start of the fight, 79% HP threshold and 49% HP thresholds. At the start of the fight, it will boost its defense stats by 200%. At 79% HP threshold, it will further boost its defense stats to 300%. The maximum brave damage reduction auras are 90%. The maximum brave gain reduction auras are 90%. To handle against the brave reduction auras, you can use brave damage up calls like Jack or Sephiroth. To handle against the defense boost, ignore defense units are highly recommended. 8 is a featured unit for the chapter, so he will excel for the fight if you have him. Alternatively, you can use the enchant and imperil strategy to hit the enemies for elemental weakness damage. Jegran, the featured BT unit, excels for this fight as he can do rainbow brave damage with his BT effect. Setzer, Purim, Lena, and Zack are used for the bulk of the JP runs. So do consider bringing them if you have them. Next, I will be covering the boss key mechanics in detail. Firstly, let's cover the recast ability in depth. When its HP is 50% or greater, it will use an AoE Brave plus HP attack recast, diffusive energy cannon. This recast ability is very dangerous. Make sure you have damage mitigation covered for the entire party. If you are planning to take the attack without any damage mitigation, do ensure all units' HP are capped a maximum and you don't get broken by it. When its HP is depleted to below 50%, it will switch its recast attack to the concentrated energy laser. It always seems to target the unit with the lowest current HP. So you can manipulating the boss targeting by removing HP passives on your tank unit before commencing the fight. This attack will bypass brave or HP damage nullification effects. There are several ways to handle this attack. You can take the attack head-on with a unit that has last stand ability. Purim is great for this since she has overheals and her LD grants party-wide last stand. As the attack is not guaranteed hit, you can use an evasion tank like 8 to lock and dodge the attack. Lastly, you can also choose to prevent its brave gains with Setzer's Freeze Joker. If the boss can't gain brave, their damage will always be 0. The next mechanic that you need to watch out for is the crystal weapon and the summon phase. Firstly, let's cover the crystal weapon. It has 2.5 million HP each and the boss can summon up to 2 of these to the battlefield. The key attacks are laser, an AoE brave attack and beam cannon, a single brave attack. If its current brave is high, it could do a HP attack. So, it is important to keep their brave under control. Now, let's cover the normal summon phase which applies when the boss HP is above 50%. The boss will initiate this at the start of the fight. The summoned crystal weapon will be summoned with max brave. If there is an existing crystal weapon on the battlefield, the boss will summon a second one while healing the existing one's HP back to full. Once the boss HP drops to below 50%, it will initiate the enhanced summon phase right after it uses its recast ability, Concentrated Energy Laser. The summon phase works similar to the normal summon phase except that the summoned crystal weapon will come with 5 framed buffs with no duration limit. The main boss will also gain a red aura that will further boost its defense by another 100%. The aura will only be removed when the crystal weapons are destroyed. Due to the astronomical defense that the boss has at this point in time, it is important that your party have some way to shave off the Brave to minimize any potential HP damage, as this is considered quite a tricky fight. Here is a survival toolkit summary for your quick reference. Here are 3 main points that you need to take note of. 1. Damage mitigation and last stand. Both versions of the boss recast ability are dangerous. Damage mitigation is important for survival against the diffusive beam cannon. If you don't, do make sure your party HP is capped to tank the attack. The boss will use the recast ability, Concentrated Energy Laser, which ignores Brave or HP damage reduction effects. To handle that, there are a lot of options that you can consider. You lock it with a tank that has last stand, or evasion tank like a party-wide last stand is also very useful here. If you are using a lock tank that has last stand, for example Zac, do make sure you have a burst healer to heal back the tank unit's HP to above 50% HP. Here is my recommendations that you can consider for the fight. They are 8, Glove, Zac, Kuram and Leon. As the boss attacks are mainly non-elemental, Leon excels here for his darkness absorption mechanic. As mentioned earlier, Kuram also excels for the fight for her overheals and party-wide last stand. 2. Controlling the Brave gains. If you keep the boss Brave in check, it means that there won't be any danger you would potentially be facing. Units that offer this utility are Setzer, Arsila, Yuffie, and Edward. Setzer is featured a lot in most of the JP clears for this utility, as well as he will enable Rainbow Brave damage for the party with his fixed dice buff. 3. Ignore defense and Rainbow Brave cap damage. As the boss will gain astronomical defense stat boosts, it is important that you have means to handle them. Jegran will gain access Rainbow Brave cap damage if you have his burst. Other units that have Rainbow Brave damage utility are Setzer and Core. Deploying ignore defense counter units is also a common strategy deployed by JP players. 8. Orin and Beatrix offer such utility. For summons, I will recommend you to use one of the following 4 options: Odin, Shiva, Diabolos or Rayma. As the orb requires you to inflict a stacking debuff to uptick the orb, here is a reminder of the units that offer stacking debuff. They are Kurasame, Jack, 7, Sync, X-Death and Edward. I have come to the end of my boss guide presentation. Hopefully you find it useful. If you like the video, please give a like. Please subscribe to my channel for future gaming content. Good luck for the fight tomorrow. Bye.